Hello everyone, this is Nick Moline, and today I'm going to be talking to you about estate planning, mainly for farmers and ranchers. This is a topic that's definitely impacted my family and my wife's family, and it is impacting more and more generations of farmers and ranchers as we go on, and there are more tax laws and fewer farmer and ranchers, so their voices are being heard less and less on this specific problem. Uh, the estate planning can be kind of a complicated thing, or it can be as simple as maybe when you're done farming and ranching, you're ready to sell off your farm or ranch and your assets and retire and enjoy your hard work. And if that's the case, then your estate planning is going to be fairly simple and straightforward. However, if you do have future generations that you're hoping to pass it down to, then this is something that you need to be as proactive as possible. With the IRS, you're allowed a $10 million benefit, death benefit. So me as an individual, I can inherit, me and my wife, we can inherit up to a $10 million estate before we have to pay any kind of tax penalties, or we can inherit, or not necessarily inherit, but receive a gift of up to $15,000 a year before we are taxed on that gift. So those are two crucial things that you need to keep in mind when you're working on your estate planning. I know that $10 million sounds like a lot, but you get a lot of these family operations, and they as a business, they could very easily be worth over $10 million, and you could almost cripple the next generation by not having a proper estate planning in effect. That's what happened to my dad and his parents on their family ranch. Essentially, my grandparents had to, well, they had to pay a 40% tax penalty on the ranch, and although the ranch is worth several $1,000,000, it doesn't mean that it necessarily cash flows that every year. That's another issue to get into, is the cash flow of things. But so that's with the IRS. Those are kind of the numbers that you're able to work with how much you can gift to the next generation each year, and how much you can plan on them being able to inherit tax-free. From Cow Calf Weekly, Amanda Rackey wrote a good article with 10 tips to your estate planning, so I'm going to cover that really fast. The number one tip is there's no time like the present, which I think I kind of already touched on, that this is something you need to be as proactive about as possible. Tip number two is plan for if you don't die right away. That might sound kind of silly, but if hopefully you're starting this when you're in your 40s or 50s, plan on living until you're 80, 85, 90 years old, and know what your retirement's going to look like, because you're not necessarily, as a rancher and farmer, you're not going to be working for a career that necessarily has retirement benefits. So you need to figure out how to pay for your life, as well as how you're going to pass on a business to the next generation. Tip number three is don't keep secrets. This is something that is very, very important. Mixing business with family can always be a very tricky thing, so your communication has to be stellar to get everything to work out just right. Tip number four is stop trying to cut the pie equally. It's okay if you don't give all your kids the same amount. Maybe you have some kids that aren't interested in the ranch. They're off living their life doing other things, and you have one son or daughter that stayed on the farm and ranch and is working on it and making a living. That's fine. The kids that left the ranch, they can still get something, but things don't have to be divided up equally. You don't need to divide the acreage up equally. Maybe you can give the kid that left the ranch some money, some kind of liquid asset, and That way you can leave the business as intact as possible for the next generation to be able to continue working and making a living that way. Tip number 5 is take inventory and coordinate. So know what your ranch is worth. This goes back to the tax benefit for the $10 million. Know if that's good, if you're going to be up there past that level or not. It's always good to know what your worth is. Tip number 6 is take stock with what you have and what you own. This goes right with the inventory one. Number 7 is check your liquidity. Make sure that you can afford to pay the penalty if that's what it's going to be, or see what the true cash flow is every year on your operation. Tip number 8 is organize and maintain your records. I feel like this goes a lot back with the communication. Good records is going to be instrumental in helping this process continue on. Tip number 9 is build your team of professionals. I would highly recommend getting in contact with the CPA because they know all the tax laws. A lot of them have another certificate, and specifically estate planning, that can help and guide you through this process. And a will isn't necessarily all you need to do. There's a lot of things that you can do to help this planning be as painless as possible. And then the final tip is to maintain your estate plan. Once you go through all the work, don't just put it aside and hope your kids look at it in 60 years when you pass away. Keep visiting it and modifying it as the time comes.